Here. The Rebbe brings here that the Rambam says there's a mitzvah of Yidiyas Hashem. Mitzvah Sirishena Leida Sheyesham Matzir Rishon. Leida Sheyesham Alakas. The kasha is the kasha the Reb Chizdai Krash kasha the Chasad brings the Derech Zesecha. How's the shach to say a mitzvah that there is a mitzvah? If someone's accepting the concept of a mitzvah, that means he already knows that there's a mitzvah. By definition, it's not shayach to say a mitzvah to know that there's a mitzvah. Okay, that's kind of there's a commandment. You should know that there is a commandment. If he accepts the Muslim mitzvah, so what's the shayach mitzvah? So them zok the Barbanel that according to the Rambam, the etzim in of Yidiyas Hashem, the fact that a person knows there's an Eibishter, that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is that the Eibishter that you already know that he exists, you should understand and you should know that he is the Metzias Achi Shloime. And then besteht the mitzvah of Yidiyas Hashem. The Yidiyas Hashem that's muchach to know that there's a mitzvah. You just have to know that there's someone, there's an Eibishter, there's someone that you have to obey what he says, and that whatever he says goes. You don't have to know that he's the most ultimate being. That's what he brought. The mitzvah is that you should know that the Eibishter is the Metzias Achi Shloime. That's one thing. And then the Barbanel adds, in was besteht take the tachas. In was besteht a Metzias Achi Shloime. And how do you define an ultimate perfection? Something that there's the most ultimate shleimus, the Hadran, or what expresses ultimate perfection is a Metzias which is fully independent. He doesn't erdafish onkemet zekenim nicht. Who ain't tzarich b'metzius soil zulas. He doesn't need he's fully, totally independent. He doesn't lack anything. He doesn't have to get. He cannot be complemented. He cannot get any benefits from anyone else. He's not dependent on anyone else. And this line has also a lot of emek. What this line means that who ain't tzarich b'metzius zulas means it's fully independent. And the second thing is that every other metzius is dependent on him. These two pratim that expresses the concept of ultimate shleimus. So the Barbanel, there's two things the Barbanel is saying. The etzem zach and the vas b'shet the mitzvah, not the etzem zach to know that there's an Eibishter, but to know that the Eibishter is the most perfect being. And then the Barbanel adds, and vas b'shet the most perfect being. Vas b'shet the most perfect being. These two pratim, Tazar Shleimus means that who any tzarech l'zolase, b'kol mash zolase tzarech b'mitzias eilu. And the Rebbe is taking on the Barbanel's pshat. Even though Sindar says, Mosadik argues the Barbanel, but the Rebbe is taking on the Barbanel's pshat. And the Rebbe adds, but this Barbanel isn't right, that it's merum is in Lashon HaRambam. The famous kasha everybody asks. The Rambam is l'chorei kefil himself in halach. The Rambam says leida sheshem matzir rishon, which matzir rishon itself means that who eni tzarich mitzias l'zolasi. Rishon means that he's the first. That means that he wasn't brought into being by anyone else. He's the first. It means there was nothing before him, so his existence stems from within himself. The mitziusim atzmusi. The Eibishter is azas zach, which is. They didn't acquire existence from someone else. He exists mitzad atzmai. Mitziusim atzmusi. It's azam in certain mahus which exists. That means his mitzias stems from who he is. That's matzir rishon. So that brings out the nekuda of who any sort of mitzias l'zolasi. But Vushtek the Rambam that who the kamash zolasi sort of mitzias eilah. The Rebbe says that's what the Rambam adds later. Who mamti kol nimtza. And then the Rambam says chol nimtzaim mashem b'neim le'nimtzu ela b'amidas imatzi. What's the Rambam adding with that? He already said who mamti kol nimtza. So the Rebbe wants to say that in them is merum is the birth of the Barbanel. Kol nimtzaim the Rambam is trying to say is that anything that exists needs him. There's one thing is that he creates everything from his part. He's a creator. But whom I'm telling is that the Eibush is a creator. But that doesn't mean that Kovetz there's certain things that don't need his creation. Kovetz there's a mitzias which any tzarechilo, which is not dependent on him. I've done like the Rambam too. Not only the Eibush is a creator. What is on their zayin, whatever exists, is dependent on him. So that's it. The Rambam's meram is that the nekuda of Barbanel. The Rambam haltach to the mitzvah. Someone sitting down to learn Rambam, he already knows that there's an Eibishter. Because mitzvah say leida if you know that there's an Eibishter. So if you know that there's a mitzvah veis has an Eibishter. So in was b'shtei the mitzvah, the chiyuv is to know the Eibishter is the tachas of Metzias Achi Shloime. Mashiach the idea that a person has before. Lav dafki thought the Eibishter is the most perfect being. He knows that the Eibishter is someone that you have to build, that he's the ultimate power. Not that why is he the ultimate power? How do you define the Eibishter that he never thought about? And the Eibishter you have to obey what he's saying, but not he doesn't have a description of what type of being the Eibishter is. That Rebbe is going to bring later. So the mitzvah is know some details about the Eibishter, and the basic details is that he's the most perfect being, and was pashteit perfection, was pashteit ultimate greatness is fully independent, and everything is dependent on him. As the Rebbe that's murum is in Lashon HaRambam. So the shaila is, what the Rebbe starts off is, What's a greater idea? So in Pashtus, the greater idea is the second idea. The first idea, a person knows that there's neighbors there. We're talking about the initial knowledge. Before, the Rebbe is not saying, when we come to be Mekamis Yediyas Hashem, a person already has Yediyas Nesafis that he picked up, Mitzad Chveis, a person picks up Yediyas. Everything's being Mitzad a Yid, that, Apitayla, before the mitzvah, the only thing you know is there's neighbors there. You know, and you don't know any description about the neighbors there. You know that there's someone that whatever he says goes, and you trust him and you believe in him. And what is this? You don't know any definition about the son. You have no description. What type of being is the son? So there's no yediyas. You don't know any characteristics about it. The second, you already know pratim. You know that he's independent. Everything's dependent on him. That the yediyah which is before the tzivah is a higher yediyah than the yediyah which comes after the tzivah. That's what that's on game. Oh, so that's what we started this. And the Kovetz the Rebbe says is, there's kama pratim in this line in Sefei, but we read the whole thing inside. Shloime zudim tzusi is baruch. So the Rebbe says two nekudas in this. One nekuda is that the etzem of Elokus b'shteit nicht that he's the most greatest and highest being. The whole concept is that the Eibusher is the most perfect being, or the most shleimus tegmetzias. That the whole musik of shleimus is a nibra. What's the Eibusher himself is beyond any description. There's only him, no description at all. Not no description that he's beyond description. There's only him himself, without a concept of description. And so when you say beyond description, it sounds like sometimes that he's higher than saying description. We don't want to say that he's higher than saying description. So don't not MLA. Whatever he wants is going to be. There's no concept at all. The Rebbe says, this idea that a person has, that a yid has b'fnei atzivui, as don Eibishter, was der Wort Eibishter hat kein Teich nicht. The Rebbe says in Tanya that was the Rebbe saying in Tanya that there's homachlekes when they get to the tzimtzum, there's two machlekes when they get to the tzimtzum. One shaila is what's the nature of the tzimtzum? Is the tzimtzum taka siluk of the air? Or the tzimtzum is only a helen. Tzimtzum lafkipshut. That's ein machlekes. But the zweite machlekes given, where was the tzimtzum? The Rebbe says that tzimtzum, and that says in the Kisvi Arizah, Loshen tzimtzum, it's lafkipshut. It doesn't mean that the Insof was misalik his eir from Elam Hazah. The eir is present. We're just not aware of it. Tzimtzum means helen. It's ein zach. The Rebbe takes so when you say tzimtzum is helen, was in his alam gevar? What was hidden? So the Rebbe says the eir. There was a tzimtzum in the eir. In the Maamar there was no tzimtzum at all. There's no tzimtzum. The Rebbe says that's why I feel noshim v'am yaretz shem shemayim shagar b'fikil. So the Rebbe says there was madish many times when if there's the noshim or am yaretz and noshim shutim which never thought in their life when they said the word Eibishter, what's this gemeint, this being Eibishter? When they said Galeib der Eibishter Baruch Hashem, the Ma'aseh Hashem used to ask people to say Baruch Hashem. What was the taich in this concept? The musig of Eibishter at kein taich nicht gat. When the Nashim and Ami Aretz, the Shem Shemayim Shagar B'Fikil, Baruch Hashem is a Yidayim to Eibishter. This Eibishter is not the most exalted being. That's not the Pshat most. A being that we trust him, we daven him. But what's the description of this being? It's not about description. It's a being without any description. And that Yidiyah, that's a Yidiyah in the Etzem Alei. This Baruch Hashem that a Yid says, this concept of Lakus, this someone that the Anashim shouldn't daven to, this Yidiyah that a Yid has before the Tzibah. A Yid faces Don Eibishter, that Eibishter does the Etzem Ambish Lakus. There's no description. The Eibishter has no description. It's not a word of Pshittis. It's not a word that is beyond description. So there's only him. There's no was b'shteit this someone. B'shteit is from this. So there's like a no taich. But this no taich is not because it's not the face garnished. In them b'shteit, this is a yidiyah in the etzem amish of Elokus. You get the general concept. That's what the Rebbe is going to say here. The yidiyah that a yid has lifnei atzivui, which is a yidiyah in the Eibishter himself. That's a yidiyah in the Eibishter himself. That's the chiddush of the Rebbe. The ein zach of the Rebbe zon. If Elokus b'shteit from ultimate, if atzmos was ultimate shleimus, ultimate blikvol, ultimate ein sof. So Shasa Yidina sagt Baruch Hashem, what she thinks? She's thinking about an ultimate Ein Sof. She doesn't know the word infinite. What she thinking about? She's not thinking any Taich Be'etzim. But that's the Chal. How can it Shayach that the Rebbe brings later? So one of the things the Rebbe teaches in this Hadran, which doesn't say, but the Rebbe teaches here, that the fact that Shem Shemaim Shagar B'Fikil, this whole musik is because Atzmos is Begili B'chal Makim. Because Atzmos is Nirgash by Yid. This musik of an Eibishter, that's not a creation of the mind. A musik which is created by the mind has to have a certain description. The musik of Eibishter hat kein Teich nicht. So Hadran, the Rebbe says in the Torah that Eina tinik yidei alikir saba at she eatim tam daga. That a child until he has in Gemara that a child until he eats that grain, he can't shrufen tate. So the Rebbe says that a child he starts eating his time tam daga and a roof tate. What does the musik of father mean to him? He knows that he doesn't know that he comes from him. But after he came, he feels a special connection to this person. But he can't. But he doesn't. He doesn't have. It's the kesher of Abu Ben is a kesher pashut, and this so it doesn't need a taich. Certain things you say, if what this is, so what is he feeling here? So then it's not the Indian. The kesher of a father with a son is like a beyond the Havana of Seichel because they're stamp for them the verbund and nafshis the verbund. So this verbund is higher than descriptions in the pshitas, and that's like a nirgish with the son. The Remes Kameshu is nirgish with the son. So that the Rebbe saying over here is the idea that a yid has in Elokus. Lifnei atzivu, that's the idea in the etzem alei. Your face not garnished. What does it mean he has no garnish? He knows there's a someone, but this someone has no description. The Eibishter is an etzem without any description at all. There's only himself. That's the one that the Rebbe is saying here. But till the Rebbe brings this, the Rebbe starts speaking Kama Pratim and he gets to Shleimus. But that's the point. The Minzen Kama Pratim, the Maamar Zenachma, Abir Bezeh. First of all, there was like this. Shleimu zudim mitzias yizbarach. Mashu eni tzarech l'zolasi. But kol mashu zolasi tzarech mitzias elav. Hu shleimu shal piseichel. That's number one. Means al piseichel, a being which is dependent on something else, is a being which lacks. If someone else could compliment you, and someone else could give you could add some inyanim by you, could be mashlim you, that means that you're lacking. That's onkum mitzat That's a chisarn. That's al piseichel, as I say. Al derech zeh, if, I'm verstehen what the beard is, but as I state, al piseichel, if there are other mitzvahs which are not dependent on you, that's chisarn in your shleimus. Not only that, if you're dependent, it's chisarn in your shleimus, but if others are not fully dependent on you, it's also chisarn in your shleimus. Al piseichel, as I say. But that's al piseichel. Kiva shakish baruch inu mugdu b'shem gadech has v'shalim, gam leba esim agdarim. Shal piseichel, heim b'chuyavim. What did I want to say here? This is one of the kodesh that the Rebbe wants to say in the Hadran, is that when he, B'pashas and Chassidus, when you say that the Eibishter is higher than Seichel. Someone said exactly. The Eibishter is Ram v'nisal am gedera Seichel. The regular pshat is, you say that if someone's going to say, P'sachveis ein rayid, which is a chveis hagoyin gadol, so you're going to say that someone's going to say, Vaz b'shteit is a great alumnus, then he's able to figure out, or shvera tesis, he knows how to figure out. So now it's going to say, nicht in dem b'shteit the gadol. A shlei berich more than that. Pshat, Remes, just say, shlei berich higher than figuring out the shvera tesis. So you're going to say, it's when you say that sein shleimus b'shteitish nazad dover mitzumtzim, sasach gresser, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have that shleimus. He for sure has that. He's much greater than that. So if he's able to figure out, but that doesn't encapsulate his whole shleimus. He's much more than that. The Rebbe is saying is not that seichel is mitzumtzum, so das was seichel versteht what's a mitzvah shleima that doesn't capture the ultimate shleimus of Elokus. The Eibishter is much greater, a higher degree of greatness that seichel can't be taken. So Rebbe wants to say something else. Even apiseichel, the inyan of the komash zolot yitzarach mitzias elav is a ma'ila. But the Eibishter is not mugdar and seichel. The gabi him it's not a ma'ila. So the gabi, even the kaviyachal, the Eibishter would not have this shleimus. He wouldn't be lacking anything. That's what Rebbe wants to say here. Seichel was created. So the concept that an independent being, that shleimus is someone fully independent, and something else, that concept, that's in them b'shteit davar shalim, this concept was created. Because the whole Gidra Seichel were created. Since they were created, the Eibush is nishmugdin in them. That means that not that this doesn't describe his ultimate greatness. He doesn't need, nisht in them, he's not mugdar that he has to be considered, that he needs to have this mile. Das havarta steht da. That's not as getouched in, that's the Rebbe saying here. It says, since the Shleima Zu, Shleima Shal Piseichel, Mikim HaShakesh Baruch Inu Mugdar B'Shem Gadech Chas V'Shalom, Gam Lei B'Esim Agdarim Shal Piseichel M'Chiyab. So that we know Api Pashtas. There brings the general rule. The general rule, the Eibush is Nin Nanim Nois. The Eibush is not Mucher Gidra Seichel. Piseichel, Siba has to come before him Mesubah. And it's not possible. This is the cause and that's the effect. So it's not shaykh that the cause should be after the effect. The Eibush is Nin Nanim Nois. It's machlekes about it. But the achra is that the Eibush is Nin Nanim Nois. That means that Ayal Piseichel can nicht nur sein als Siba Nochem Mesubah. But the Eibush is nicht mugdar in them. And so what the Eibush created the whole concept of Seichel. He created that this thing makes sense and this thing doesn't make sense. If the Eibush wanted to Ken Bashafin that it should dafke be fakir, that a Mesubah should come dafke before the Siba. And then we wouldn't have been able to understand the Ifanach. Nothing no, even dvarim ha'mechiyav ma'peseichel, nothing is a mucher chamtzis. Everything is, the gidra seichel are the way they are, because that's the way the Eibusha created them. But the er alein nish mugdar, Eibet es bashafen, is er alein nish mugdar. So the etzem word that the Rebbe Binsky calls gidra seichel nivru yimani yizbarich. Hadim izem moving be pasha yizbarich shabarich, sag that meni mugdar in chas Hashem. Shumas harashba, yedua shu yizbarich nimna anim lois.